Normally I wait for people to come on here before I start talking, but I realize that's a little bit awkward for people watching back, and probably most people are watching back on the replay. So I'm gonna dive right in, even though ain't nobody even on here, but that's Instagram's fault, not mine. So I made this updates because I want to talk a little astrology. I want to talk a little bit of what I've been working on and planning, and just a little bit of politics. Let's really talk about it. Like, how about that? Let's really talk about it. Let me close out this distracting window. You did make it today, Cat Van. Oh my God. So I have so many things on my mind. I have so many things that I am percolating and planning and working on. Some of them you know about, some of them you don't. Some of them I've given a little bit of details on. Some of them I've not talked about at all. But I want to start out today to talk about, hey everybody, love thyself. Hello, hello, hello. I want to start today talking about my two latest posts. My two latest posts are both about the fact that spring 2024 eclipse season is upon us. Now listen, I did a whole live like last week, or maybe it was the week before last, where I talked all about the eclipses, and Instagram was a hater. I am thoroughly convinced, as I said before, that Instagram is surveilling these lives and shutting them off, claiming that we're playing music when we're really just talking about Palestine P and the Jenny Oside. You know what I mean? So there's that. But I have decided that I'm probably going to switch up my format for doing content, like some of the live content that I do. So normally I'll go live and do a new moon or full moon reading here on Instagram. And I just feel like Instagram is the hater. The video format is not ideal for sharing to other formats, other platforms. So for now, I think my new and full moon readings are going to be on YouTube live. YouTube has a more reliable live platform and it just looks better. I could do it with my camera. It takes a little bit more to set up and plan, but that's what I'm going to do. So there is a new moon on Saturday. It's not Saturday, it's Sunday the 10th. So I'm either gonna go live on Saturday the 9th or Sunday the 10th for the reading for the new moon. And if you've got your 2024 Sidereal Astrology Guide, then you know new moon is about establishing symbols of self-determination. That's just really juicy. Hey everybody. Hey Darren. Thank you all for coming on and joining me. I wanted to also, so I talked about the lives. Oh, some of the other live content that I do will be switching to Zoom. So if you're in my Podia community with on all levels, so whether you're free or paid, I'll be dropping links to Zoom in the Podia when I'm gonna go live. Again, Instagram is trash, and I can actually interact with you all in Zoom, but that means that you all, if you want to participate in my Zooms or my live broadcasts that are, what's the word? We're talking back and forth, like if I'm doing some tarot readings, if I'm doing some, if I'm doing whatever little chats where you get to ask questions, join my Podia. You can join at the community level, which is free, but you can also join at the friends level. And that's the one that really pays for itself, because at the friends level is when you begin to automatically be signed up for the monthly Sidereal study guide groups, sessions, whatever. So if you go to if you go to my profile and you go to my highlights, I have all the details for the Divination for Liberation Podia community. It's like Patreon, but not. And yeah. Okay, so now that I've gotten all that out the way, I'll share some more announcements later, but now that I've gotten all of that out the way, let's talk some astrology. The consensus is that March, April, May, probably June, July, August. I mean, let me put it to you this way. And you know I'm not the one to be alarmist, but if I tell you that it's about to go down, it's about to go down. If I tell you that things are looking wild and crazy, kids, y'all know I'll be right. I'm my receipts and track record speak for itself. And so today is really the cross over the threshold. Today is March 7th, 2024. March 6th, 2024. And we're crossing into a threshold after this. Late tonight, Mercury enters Sidereal Pisces. And to me, I tend to have a different way of watching patterns. And hey, Black Moon Rose, my screen has a ghost in it. It waved at you, but hey. I tend to have a different way of observing the patterns of retrogrades and eclipses and things like that than other people do. But it's because I'm the kind of person that is like an astute observer of things in real time. And if the theory behind a certain astrological idea or concept does not align with what I'm observing, then I'm throwing it away, which is really interesting, right? Because one of the questions that I pose around this season's eclipses is, can you connect the dots even when it reveals a pattern that you don't want to be true? I mean, yes. So all of that to say, Mercury entering Pisces. And if you've got your planetary transits iCal, then you know the exact date and time that that's happening, right? Which is 10:50 p.m. Central Time, and that's Venus in Aquarius at 11:16 p.m. Central Time. So for me, once Mercury crosses over into Pisces tonight, it's go time, it's game time, it's going down, it's happening. And one of the things that strikes me as so interesting about this Mercury retrograde and eclipse season that we're about to embark on is that so many things that look like or seem like they should be occurring, you know, during a Mercury retrograde or during an eclipse or during a Mercury retrograde shadow have been happening. Policy changes in terms of the CDC, AT&T going down, Facebook and Instagram going down, cyber attacks on United Healthcare, right? All of these things are like, okay, so we're not actually, I mean, if we go by the kind of way that most people measure retrogrades and eclipses, Mercury's not even close to the degree where it is going to station direct. It's way far away from that. And yet we have all of these things happening. We have all of these very Mercury retrograde things like happening. And they are on the theme of the eclipses that we are dealing with. They're on the theme of reorganizing hierarchies of trust. Mutable eclipses are slept on, I think. Let me leave that opinion to myself. But I say that because, you know, Gemini, Sagittarius, Pisces, and Virgo are not given the same like mysterious aura and like, you know, interest and fascination in like pop culture memes as like Leo or Cancer or Scorpio, right? Which are fixed signs and cardinal signs. They're just not given the same like right, they're not really talked about much at all. But in my own historical analysis of the types of things that occur during eclipses and mutable signs, those are the ones that you really need to watch out for, because as I've said before, you know, excuse me, if I cannot choke on this bread. As I've said before, what we're in the midst of and what we need to be observing during this Mercury retrograde and during this eclipse season is that we are in an information war. We are in a war over making meaning. Like this is a question that you really need to consider. Like, who gets to decide what things mean to you? And this might break your brain a little bit, but it's because we tend to think of meaning as innate, meaning which by that I mean to say that the meaning of a word, the meaning of an action, the meaning of inaction, the meaning of an event or an experience, that it's fixed, it's rigid, and there's only one way to understand or interpret what something means, like a word or an experience or a feeling, right? That there's a right way to interpret a feeling and there's a wrong way to interpret a feeling. There's a right way to interpret an event and there's a wrong way to interpret event. I was just listening to an episode of Upstream podcast today, and actually I was listening to 2 different episodes of that podcast. I almost got a 3rd one in. But one I was finishing up was on this book. I think it's called If It Burns or something like that. And it's kind of like a historical recounting of what we call the Arab Spring and focusing on people-led movements that resulted in destabilization or overthrowing of governments, right? And in that podcast episode, and then the second one that I listened to, which was on Black Scare, Red Scare, or Red Scare, Black Scare, Charisse Burden Stelly, I think is her name. She's written this book. And in that book, she talks about the intersection of anti-communist political policy and anti-Black political policy and legislation, and how the Red Scare basically was not this thing that happened, you know, in one period of time, but it's actually a position and policy of the United States government. And she went and talked on all of these. She went on to talk about all of these different examples of what this looks like and how this works, right? But I bring that up because in both of those episodes, the thing that struck me is that the people or the institution that has power, meaning guns, tanks, the keys to the prison, control of access to food, water, housing, safety, right? The people and institutions and organizations that have control of those things also have control of making meaning. To have control of making meaning is that it means that it doesn't matter what your intention is. It does not matter what the dictionary says. It does not matter what legal precedent says. It does not matter what science says. It don't matter what the Bible says. None of these things matter. What matters is what the people and institutions and organizations in power have as their goal, and how can they make meaning of your actions, your words, your feelings, your body, your bodily functions in order to serve their ends, right? And I bring this up because I want you to Look at this in your own life and in your personal life. Who in your life has had the power to make meaning of what you say and what you do? You know, growing up as a little Black girl in a Black family, in a Black church, right? And it's like, you know, when you're a kid, those power dynamics between you as a child and a parent are really loud, but you don't necessarily recognize that as such as a kid. These new kids do, right? But I think when I was a kid, just to even think that was such a source of shame, and it was so repressed. But looking back, I can understand how my parent got to decide what my facial expressions mean. My parent got to decide what my words or my tone of voice or what my bodily functions or what my feelings mean, right? Oh, that ain't nothing to cry about. That's meaning making. That is them deciding that they have the power to determine whether or not something that happened to you is appropriate in terms of the feelings and reaction you're having, right? Don't even look like you turning your eyes the wrong way. You rolling your eyes at me, right? Again, the parent is the one with power, and they have the right to make meaning. And so something that's really, really important about this, again, as you are observing this in your own upbringing, in your own life, is to pay attention how that is the process by which we absorb the belief systems of the hierarchies or people who are higher in the hierarchies of power than us. Okay, let's see here. Afurek says the pandemic is a good example of this because the government just started saying things. Exactly. The government gets to decide what your bodily functions mean, right? The government gets to decide the level of physical suffering that you should or can have before it's determined to be something that you, quote, should worry about. It's such a deep form of emotional manipulation that is not always nefarious or, you know, with malintention, but particularly in terms of the ongoing bouts we're all having with the vid, right? We are experiencing in real time what it looks like for someone else to have the power to make meaning of our own bodies. Do you get to decide when you're sick enough to stay home? Do you get to decide when you're feeling poorly enough to go to bed early or leave work early? Right? As a kid, did you get to decide when you were sick enough to stay home? This is a very, very, very subtle form of meaning making, particularly over our bodies. Afurek says this new generation is so real, love them. Man, if you want to get right and get free, just listen to Gen Alpha, okay? Just let Gen Alpha tell you whatever it is, because they got their eyes on the prize, and it is to not be oppressed in any way, shape, or form, and they don't care who you are. They are not a respecter of persons when it comes to their dignity and self-respect. And honestly, if you have the privilege to be in the life of somebody from Gen Alpha, let them change you. Let them change you. Five Fight says, don't tell me how to feel is something I still say to my mother. That is so real, man. And telling someone how they should interpret and respond to what they are experiencing in their bodies is a form of meaning making, right? So can you see in your life all of these ways that the power to make meaning is almost exclusively held in the hands of those who have power over land, capital, right? Housing, food, safety, healthcare, life, death, right? They have the power. So I think that this is one of the most interesting things to think about in terms of this Mercury retrograde. So I'm going to pull out the 2024 Sidereal Astrology Guide with the pretty sticker. Again, and go to March, and let's see here. Ooh. Mary E. Morale says, this conversation is on point as I prepare for a mediated conversation with my toxic mother. Okay, let's not skip over that, because like, this is so real. And again, I think that this is one of the most insidious ways that we are conditioned to not trust ourselves. It makes sense that as children, we would defer forming judgments to adults, right? Those of us who got a different makeup, like me, right? I was constantly called a contrarian because I was like, I don't know about that. Is that right? Is that true? Right? Which is definitely going to have like, it can be like going to the other end of the extreme, right? Like never trusting and never believing and always questioning and being skeptical. But that's another conversation for another day or maybe later. But I just say all of this to say that many, many, many of us, hey Ryan, are recovering from being perpetually gaslit. And I'm going to post about this in a carousel of slides on Instagram tomorrow about gaslighting. But gaslighting has a kind of colloquial meaning. It has like a psychological lexicon meaning. And it's normally associated with like a form of violence or oppression. And I think that that particular definition is really, really useful, but I also think that it's misapplied and weaponized. So I want to say really clearly what I mean when I say gaslighting or being gaslit. And those of you who know me, I'm really particular and precise about how I use words, because it's so important that I'm understood, and it's so important that I make sure that people aren't relying on their assumed meaning. So I try to be real clear. So in this context and in this conversation today, by gaslighting, I mean receiving the explicit or implicit message that one of your faculties is unreliable in terms of forming an accurate judgment. I'm going to say that one more time. My use and definition of gaslighting today means the implicit or explicit, receiving the implicit or explicit message that one of your faculties is unreliable for the purposes of forming an accurate judgment. Y'all hear me? Y'all got that? Is it understood? I go into teaching mode so naturally. This is what it's like to have Jupiter and Sag on your ascendant. You just can't help it. Okay, very good. So, for those of you who are students of the Divination for Liberation Sidereal Astrology method, know that to be gaslit is the wound, meaning the catalyst that leads to trust and certainty of all mutable signs. To be gaslit is the wound of all mutable signs. To receive the implicit or explicit message that a particular faculty of yours is unreliable in forming judgments, accurate judgments, is the catalyst that leads to trust and certainty and discernment for all mutable signs, which are Sidereal Gemini, Virgo, Pisces, and Sagittarius, okay? Now, I want to focus on Pisces and Virgo because I'll be here all day if I go everywhere with this. Let's do Virgo first and then we'll do Pisces. So for Virgo, the catalyst experience, the wound that leads to trust, that leads to certainty, that leads to discernment for Virgo is being explicitly lied to. To be explicitly lied to means for someone to say, oh, that didn't happen, or to give an account of an event that does not align with reality, to overtly or explicitly lie means to verbally say something that is in opposition to what is factual or true. Virgo as a sign copes with this, or they internalize this experience by becoming very literal and black and white, right? They become very literal. It's really saying, oh, you didn't see what you thought you saw. This is what really happened. You don't, right? You didn't see what you thought you saw. Now, we can see this on a larger scale, that this is the function of propaganda. Oh, that's not what that was. Girl, that was nothing. That was just a right? Somebody else telling you that what you have perceived, you didn't think, what you thought you saw, that's not what it was, right? And again, Virgo copes with this. They adapt to this experience or reality about their environment by becoming very literal and very black and white. If you've ever parented a child who will, if you don't tell them what to do exactly as you mean it, they're gonna find a loophole, right? If you use like a idiom, if you use an analogy, right, that is symbolic, like Virgo's gonna find the loophole there, right? You told me to pick up my shoes. I did pick them up, right? But they didn't go put them away, right? They picked them up and put them back down because you didn't say, pick up your shoes, carry them to your room, put them away and leave them there, right? Like that's how you have to parent a child with Virgo, right? Right? And if you think your child is a Libra and this vibes with it, yes, right? Or if you were the child who's constantly finding the loopholes in your parents' choice of communication, you might be the Virgo child, right? The gift of Virgo, though, is meticulousness. And meticulousness is really, really, really important. On the one level, it's actually a way to protect ourselves from doing emotional labor. Because emotional labor sometimes is in the form of making meaning and connecting the dots when things are not communicated explicitly, right? You are picking up on the nuance of the tone. You're listening for changes in breathing pattern, right? You are using your past knowledge and understanding of who this person is and their intentions in order to form a meaning and judgment about what they're saying to you in this moment, right? Which is, not all emotional labor is bad, so we're not going there. But when that's relied upon too much, it's like, no, you just need to say what you mean and mean what you say, right? So context, really, really important context. If we go back to October of 2023, when we had the first eclipse in this series, it was a new moon solar eclipse in Virgo. And that was our moment of waking up, of like, wait a minute, all this time, they've been trying to tell us that Israel is the victim. And I'm looking on the screen and I'm listening to what the people of Gaza are saying to me, and one of y'all is lying. Which one of y'all is it? Who's lying here? Somebody is not telling the truth, right? This is how we started this series of eclipses. recognizing that we have been lied to, right? So let's talk about Pisces. Mercury enters Pisces tonight. Everything's gonna be all right. I got a song for everything. Mercury in Pisces, 2024 Sidereal Astrology Guide. Let's turn this around for y'all. Mercury in Pisces, hearing what is not said. Personally, for me, that's juicy AF. Especially given the fact that Mercury is not going to clear Pisces, meaning it is not going to complete its transit of that sign until May 10th. That's a whole 2 months and some change. Now, first of all, second of all, and third of all, I know this is going to get exhausting real quick, because what happens when we're hearing what is not said is, on the one hand, we are able to connect the dots that heretofore we have been unable to connect, right? But what also happens when we're hearing what is not said, we are ascribing meaning to what people are saying, maybe using context clues. But the context clues for Pisces is their own gut feeling. It's their own emotions. It's their own, felt sense of what's going on, right? Now, too much felt sense, too much gut can turn into, distrust and skepticism and suspicion, right? Which brings me to the wound, coping strategy, and gift of Pisces. So if the wound or the catalyst experience that leads to self-trust for Virgo is being lied to explicitly, the wound or catalyst experience of Pisces is being lied to implicitly. It means to withhold, right? It means to not communicate something, or to be silent, or even to deny, right? Which is why Mercury, which is often said to be in its detriment and fall in Pisces. I don't particularly care for those words, because sometimes we really do need to hear what is not said. Okay? And ain't nothing in detriment about that, especially when mofos be conveniently lying by omission. You heard what I said? Okay. Right? So, but anyways, this wound, this catalyst experience for sidereal Pisces, where Mercury is going to spend the majority of its retrograde, is being lied to by omission. So let's just take a moment real quick, friends, and look around, take a look and read a book, right? What are all of the myriad of ways that information is being withheld from us? What are all the myriad of ways on a collective, societal, political level that we are being lied to by omission? They are conveniently leaving things out on purpose, right? Right? So this people don't like when I do this, but it's just really, 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 really real. When I said this was about to be a nasty Mercury retrograde, this is on some like I ask this question: can you connect the dots even when it reveals a pattern that you don't want to be true? This is what I'm talking about right here with this Mercury retrograde, right? Then we have an eclipse on March 25th, revealing the pattern, connecting what is seen, heard, and experienced. The vision that I get for this is just like, aha, like, wait a minute. I spy, right? We about to all be Sherlock Holmes up in here. We're about to all be, Inspector Gadget, the Pink Panther of fitness pitch, right? We're all about to be connecting the dots. But we need these moments because without them, our belief systems are too rigid. Now, I don't know if you heard that. I don't know if you caught that, but I'm going to say it again for the saints in the back and those who are just walking in and have not yet been seated by the usher. We need these moments and these cyclical periods of time where we have a Mercury retrograde in Pisces, or where we have just Mercury transiting through Pisces, and when we have eclipses in Pisces, because otherwise, and Virgo, let me not leave out Virgo, because otherwise our belief systems become too rigid. So you can see and understand the point of this Mercury retrograde and the point of these eclipses is to change your belief system. Yes, your belief system needs to be changed. Your worldview needs to be changed. What you assume to be true needs to be changed. What you have been taught and internalized explicitly or implicitly needs to change. The world changes. Our belief systems are inherited. Our belief systems are also the fruit of our lived experience, right? When I talk about, reading a birth chart and what is the information that can be gleaned or received from a birth chart is a picture of the environment that you were born into. And reading that chart is giving us the information of how you have been shaped to be who you are and the relationship that you have come into with yourself and your own needs based on how that environment related to you and based on how that environment was in relationship with your needs. So we have this on a really individual level, that someone who has Mercury in Pisces can be someone who literally cannot hear, right? I've seen this true for Mercury in Sagittarius. Now, this is not always true, so don't take it that way, because I know how y'all like to do. Y'all gonna be, oh my God, Dana said people in Mercury and Pisces can't hear. No, but this can be the case. Another thing that can happen with Mercury and Pisces is that you grow up in an environment where people don't talk to you. Well, people are not, communicating things to you explicitly, or where things about your own health, your own well-being are withheld from you. And so you're left trying to make sense of how you interact and relate with others in the world. Meanwhile, if they could have just told you that one thing, you would have made sense. And you're like, oh, that's what it was? So now you playing Sherlock Holmes for the rest of your life trying to figure out what's wrong with you, and you don't know. If somebody could have just told you the truth, right, then you would have known all this time. But this is really common of like all Pisces placements. Anybody who has sidereal Pisces placements, best believe in some way, shape, or form, you have grown up in a house and to adapt to people who routinely withhold things from you, right? Meaning, it could be that they just don't know their own mind and they're lacking emotional intelligence. Meaning nobody can just say to you, hey, I'm having a real rough day. I'm about to go have a few drinks. Just watch your sister for a minute, right? Instead, they become an alcoholic, and now you're left trying to navigate the volatility of their internal emotional terrain because it's bleeding out all into the house, and y'all all swimming in the feelings of the person who cannot tell the truth to themselves and everybody else about what's going on. Right? And I always say this within the context of capitalism, whiteness, and patriarchy. These things happen within the context of capitalism, whiteness, and patriarchy. This is not to absolve your caregivers of the responsibility for being sober enough to protect you and take care of you. But since we can't go back and fix that, we got to find the target that we can fix, which is divesting from and dismantling these systems. So, coping strategy of Pisces is suspicion. If you grow up in a household where you are routinely lied to by omission, meaning the truth, facts, really useful and helpful information about the emotional reality of the people who are caring for you, right? If that is constantly withheld from you, you adapt to that by becoming freaking Sherlock Holmes. You suspicious. For Pisces, nothing is what it looks like. Everything has a deeper meaning. That's not a duck, right? Because now you're looking for flaws in the pattern. Pisces is the pattern seeker, right? This is how I like to differentiate Virgo and Pisces. If you put connect the dots drawing in front of Virgo, Virgo is focused on counting the numbers correctly. Okay, 1. Okay, then we go to 2, 3, 4. Now we're all the way at 300. Yay, I connected all of the dots in order, right? If you give a connect to the dots to Pisces, Pisces is like, I mean, I see these numbers and everything, but also there's a picture emerging here, and I'm just gonna connect the dots in the way that reveals the picture and pattern that I'm seeing. We need both of these. I need somebody to count my change right. Don't play with me. Give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 46 cents, okay? Give me my change right. But if we rely too much on the black and white literal meticulousness of Virgo, that leaves us exposed to being lied to by omission. And if we focus too much on the pattern seeking of Pisces, it leaves us exposed to being lied to explicitly, right? So, what is the gift of Pisces? Intuition. Intuition means to learn from within, to come into knowledge internally, right? Tuition, you know that word. Intuition. It means to be taught from the inside. You didn't get it from a book. You didn't count in a spreadsheet, and you didn't get it from the Bible, the Quran, or the Torah either, right? You got it internally. Your body gave you some knowledge. Your bodily functions gave you some insight. Your neurons and the way they was firing off mixed with what was happening with your stomach, and also connecting it to a larger pattern of what you've experienced when you felt this feeling before, right? That's Pisces. That's the gift of Pisces. So Mercury and Pisces, hearing what is not said. That's what we're doing during this Mercury retrograde. So real quick, let me just give you the rundown on how I perceive a Mercury retrograde. First of all, I don't really care too much about direct and retrograde station degrees, other than what they mean for aspects they're forming during the course of the retrograde, and in terms of when a retrograde or direct station degree of Mercury is revisiting degrees that have previously been activated by transits. And it just so happens that this particular Mercury retrograde is tap dancing, shucking and jiving, and doing the splits all over the degrees of the Mars retrograde from 2020 into 2021. That particular Mars retrograde was truly one of the defining astrological transits of the start of the pandemic. Okay, the Mars retrograde in Sidereal Aries and Pisces was one of the defining, meaning if we analyze the Mars retrograde of 2020 and 2021, we will understand that it was that retrograde that in part defined what we look back as this was the start of the pandemic, right? And a lot of it has to do particularly with the Pisces part of the retrograde, right? Which would have been, and I'm gonna give y'all some exact dates, because y'all know the 2024 Sidereal Astrology Guide is not my first hoedown at the rodeo. We got a 2020 Sidereal Astrology Guide. Hey, Tommy. So let's see what these dates are. So Mars entered Pisces on June 18th, 2020. through August 16th, 2020. So let's sit with that for a minute. What was going on with you? June 16th, 2020. Did I say that right? June 18th, 2020 through August 16th, 2020. Where were you? Who were you with? And what was y'all doing? I need to know. Now, specific things to look back for. Movement. How were you moving? Where were you going? Literally or figuratively. Moving as in moving house. Moving as in cars. During that time, I bought a car and moved to New Orleans. Literally within that 6-week or whatever period. Right? Dang. Yep. Because I got this place July 11th. Wow, that was the day Mercury Station Direct. And I moved in here July 31st. So let's see here. Lindy says I moved 3 times that year. That's a lot. Moving is no joke. It's so disruptive. Estebanito says I was isolated and lonely as hell. Alligator Pie says, yeah, I moved then too. Right? So Mars, let's look at what the Sidereal Astrology Guide, the Div for Live Essentials, says about Mars. Five Fight says, got a new car too. Mars is good for that. Mars is good for getting you moving, okay? So we're gonna read first what Mars does. Mars differentiates, or that should say separates. I don't know how that got there, but that's fine too. Mars brings activity, action, conflict, and energy for movement, or an actual vehicle for movement, and accomplishment to the house it transits. It shows where your physical energy is directed, even when conversations, your attention, or relationship issues draw your bruh. There's so many typos in this. How did that happen? Draw your attention elsewhere. Conflict may also occur here. Okay? So Mars is autonomy and separation, grit, determination, ambition, effort, labor, toil, physical abilities, repulsion, dominate, survive, accidents, fighting, opposition, defend, offend, sports, military competition. So that's Mars, right? So that particular part of the Mars retrograde, very, very, I got more dates for you, so don't get too excited yet. Okay, now we have Mars in Aries, which was August 16th, 2020 through October 3rd, 2020. So Mars in Aries, August of 2020 through October 3rd. On October 3rd, Mars went back into Pisces. Rokinky 90 says, I'm sure I was applying for school. Very, 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 very interesting. Now, if you have the 2024 Sidereal Astrology Guide and you've gone through and circled your rising sign in the houses in my birth chart table, you can find out which one of your houses is Pisces and which one is Aries by just coming down this column to the row of your rising sign and stopping on that number, right? So Pisces for me is 4th house because I'm Sagittarius rising. And of course, I moved house. It doesn't always happen that way, but because of the things that my solar return chart and profections were doing, that's what happened, right? And then Aries was my 5th house. And that was really interesting because when I left my parents' house, that was the first time that me and my kid were alone together. And we've spent the last 3.5, 4 years working out some type of parent-child relationship that works for us while we're here alone. Lindy says, oh, yep, I moved back in with my parents for the first time in years. Death was beefing with them. Jamie says, Sag rising moved October 2022. Yes, so in October, that's when Mars went back into Pisces, and it actually stayed there until December 23rd. So for me, I spent the second round of Mars in Pisces furnishing my apartment, because I moved down here with a piano, 2 benches, a bunch of books and clothes. I mean, I don't really think anything that's in this room was here. Not this desk, not my couch, not the rugs, not the chair. My speakers I had. But yeah. Oh man, Five Fight says, someone threw a rock at my windshield right after buying that car. So what's really interesting about that is that when Mars went into Aries August of 2020, it was immediately locked up in a square with Saturn. And Saturn and Mars would go on to square each other 3 times before that was all over. So let's see. The first 2 were in September. Let's see. No. So Mars squared Saturn. Mars direct squared Saturn retrograde on August 24th. And then in September, Mars retrograde squared Saturn direct September 29th. And then here's the 2021 Sidereal Astrology Guide. And then Mars squared Saturn for the 3rd time. It had to be January. I don't see it in here though. I don't know where it is, y'all. It had to be January 2020. Must have been one of them things I missed. Oh well. Let's see. On the go, JoJo says, what time period are we talking about? Fall 2020. So I'm giving a lot of different dates. Mars in Pisces was June 18th to August 16th. Then Mars in Aries was August 16th through October 3rd. And then we have Mars in Pisces again, October 3rd through December 23rd. And then Mars in Aries again, December 23rd to February 21st, 2021. I hope that answered your question. So all of that to say, this Mercury retrograde is right on top of this, almost the exact same degrees of where Mars was then, right? So what does this mean? Thank you, Darren. January 14th was the last Mars Saturn square. I didn't even have that in here. Nope, I got Jupiter, but I don't have Saturn. Must have missed that. So what does it mean? First of all, just understand that that Mars retrograde set up a story, right? It coincided with the sequence of events that many of us can look back to, be like, oh, yep, I bought a car, I moved, my windshield was broke, I did A, B, C, D, A, F, G, this is what happened, right? And what that means for under a Mars transit, either you're trying to move or separate, right? You're trying to assert your autonomy, your personal power, or you're trying to physically move, which can be an assertion of your personal power and autonomy, right? So having a car is an assertion of your personal power and autonomy in this particular society. It means that you have the means to get up and go when you want to, and you can go where you want to go. And that's a form of personal autonomy and personal power, right? Anytime where you get to do what you want to do, or you are attempting to do what you want to do without considering other people, centering your own will, your own ambitions, and your own capabilities, that's Mars, Okay, so when you look back from June 2020 all the way through February 2020, right, 21, you're thinking about how were you asserting your personal power? How was your personal power and autonomy and freedom of movement thwarted, right? You know, so many people, you know, the first waivers who caught the vid then, they got long COVID and they have been disabled ever since. They have not had freedom of movement, and their personal power and autonomy has been thwarted since then, right? And I hope that for a lot of them, and if you're here, if you're one of them, I hope that during this time that Jupiter has been in Aries since spring 2023, and it'll be here till May 1st, 2024, that you've been getting the tools and resources and will to get accommodations for yourself, right? And getting accommodations kind of means that you have to accept the reality of your conditions and the limitations that are present in your freedom of movement physically because of illness or disability, right? Getting accommodations is like, okay, yep. And accommodations can also be medication for depression. Accommodations can be accommodations can also be, you know, recognizing that you have ADHD and or that you are autistic. And accommodations for those requires you to accept the reality of what you're actually capable of and what you're not capable of. And this particular transit of Jupiter in Aries has been really, really, really helpful for that. So yeah, Strawberry Moon says, started discovering and defining my own gender identity and sexuality during that time. Yeah, so that can be particularly true if you are Scorpio or Sagittarius rising and that Mars retrograde was in your 5th house. May not be true for you. You might have like Moon in Scorpio, Sidereal Scorpio, or Sagittarius. Estebanito, I love saying your name because I don't really get to flex this accent that often. Okay, Estebanito says, was Omicron part of any of those transits? No, Omicron was 2021 into 2022. There was no Aries then. So we've established what Mars was doing at that time. If you're just joining us, I am talking about this Mercury retrograde that we are embarking upon and how it connects back to the Mars retrograde of 2020 and 2021. And I've given some important dates here for you to reflect on what was going on for you during the Mars retrograde in 2020 and 2021. The first part, we have Mars in Pisces, June 18th through August 16th, Mars in Aries, August 16th through October 3rd, Mars in Pisces, October 3rd through December 31st, and Mars in Aries again, December 23rd through February 21st, 2021. And we're defining Mars here as asserting your personal power, your autonomy, and your relationship with your freedom of movement. I moved and got a car during that time. A lot of other people talked about moving and getting a car at that time. And I was just talking about, you know, that may be when you were disabled by the vid, right? And so coming to terms with loss of freedom of movement because of post-exertional malaise that can come from a vid infection or chronic fatigue syndrome or MECFS, right? All of those things can hamper your freedom of movement and your sense of personal power and autonomy. I think disability is really, really, really a huge part of the conversation whenever we're talking about Aries transits, because it's in the word, able, ability, right? And Aries transits always challenge us to contend with what we are capable of, and how we can use what we're capable of to exercise our personal power and autonomy. But also in terms of disability, understanding that what we are capable of at any given time can be socially determined, meaning a disabled person's freedom of movement, yes, there can be some physical issues that make them unable to walk, right? But, do we have sidewalks everywhere that are paved and level? Do we have public transportation that is accessible? Do we have buildings and spaces that are accessible? Can a disabled person go inside of a medical facility and be cared for and not worry about being harmed? Or can any of us go into a medical facility and hope that we don't take something home with us that we did not have when we came, right? So let's move on to this Mercury retrograde part of this, right? So Mercury is going to revisit this whole situation. Let me give you some dates. Baby. And we're looking at year at a glance, because this is the way we can get an overview of everything. So we already know Mercury in Pisces, March 6th. Mercury in Aries, March 25th. Mercury back in Pisces, April 9th. Mercury back in Aries, May 10th. Okay, so this is a condensed version of what we experienced in 2020 and 2021, right? We had June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, right? About 8 or 9 months of time where Mars was ping-ponging back through Pisces and Virgo. We're going to get that within like a 2-month period. So Mercury, let's look at the guide, because everything that you need to use the guide is in the guide. So we're going to go back to Div for Live, Essentials, and we're going to look at Mercury. Mercury narrates. It gives us the language. It gives us words to understand, okay? Mercury narrates the activities and topics of the house it transits. The house and sign Mercury transits at any given time determines the important topics of conversations where we are collecting and disseminating information. So Mercury is the microphone. It amplifies the sound. Mercury is the narrator. It's the closed captions. It's giving you words, telling you what's happening. It's the articulator. It is finding the best words to communicate an idea. It is the translator. It is moving things from one language or set of symbols to another language and set of symbols. It is the interpreter, because it has dexterity in more than one language, and it is able to maneuver back and forth between two languages. Mercury is the radio transmitter. It is going to get the signal from A to B, so when you turn on your radio, you can hear the song, right? What else? Mercury is also the media, right? It is literally the news media and social media, but it is also media, or the medium, that is used to transmit or contain an idea and communicate it and disseminate it in some way, shape, or form. Don't sleep on Mercury. Without Mercury, we can't talk to each other. We're just rocks without Mercury, okay? We don't think, we don't speak, we don't make tools, there's no market, no buying and selling. There's no language. We can't sing. Ain't nothing. There's no sounds. It's silent without Mercury, okay? Without Mercury, there's nothing to hear. There's nothing to say. There's nothing to think without Mercury. But we need Mercury retrogrades, because sometimes when we process a little bit too quick, and we got to run that back and be like, what you say? Maybe I heard you the first time. I didn't know for sure if I heard you right. Can you say it again? Or can you say that another way? Or now that I've really had time to hear and process what you said, no, I don't like that. Don't talk to me like that. Nope, I'm not doing it. Nope. Right? For Mercury in Pisces, we already talked about the wounds, coping strategy, and gift of Pisces, which is being lied to by omission, implied lies, right? I just didn't tell you. If we don't test, then there won't be any cases. Wink, wink. if we don't update the test, then you won't know that you got the vid because the test you got can't pick up the version you got. Wink, wink. This is being lied to by omission. It is withholding information that if it were revealed, oh my God, now everything makes sense. The purpose of being lied to by omission is to manufacture meaning by concealing facts and information that would lead you to draw a different conclusion than the one that you have drawn based on the information that you have available. So even if we go back to the 2020 time period where Mars was retrograde, how did you make a decision about where you were going and what you were doing? How did you form a judgment about what you were doing and where you were going and how? Right? What information did you use to form a judgment about where you were going, right? And if you knew then what you know now, would you have made a different move? And by now, I mean this Mercury retrograde, right? So what information is revealed? What dots are you connecting over the course of this Mercury retrograde that seriously, for real, that adds some necessary context or information that says, oh, let me revisit that decision. Q Luna 9 says CDC is set to take down the COVID section within the next few months. You know, oh my God, who is it? Oh, thank God. Okay. What I was going to say is that I think that this, I could be wrong. I really, really could be wrong, right? But I think that shortening the isolation policy for when you are positive, I think that removing information from the CDC website, I think that this does not serve the purpose that they think it will. Because in absence of these external metrics, which are explicit lies, you are left to rely upon your body. It's almost like you gotta take away all of these explicit lies that really are meant to distract you from what you're actually feeling in your body. I can't tell you, just by watching my stories on Instagram, and I know it's not me, just me, there are people who have been, and I keep saying this, but it's just true, and it's increasingly true. Renee Rapp, Adele, Justin Timberlake, Taylor Swift, people I see in my stories, they've been sick since January, since December, since November, and they've all got this thing they can't shake. Now, Renee Rapp, all them other people, they know what it is. They just can't say it for legal reasons because insurance for covering losses around their tour does not cover anything related to the vid. So I get that. But for the rest of us, right, who aren't operating under that, you know, all of this sickness, all of this illness, the theme of all of this is connect the motherfucking dots. Them hoes are so close to each other. They almost right on top of each other. And if you just connect the dots, it will all make sense. Which is why this question that I asked in the reel today, and I asked in my post yesterday, this is the most important question of 2024. Can you connect the dots even when it reveals a pattern that you do not want to be true? might drop the mic after that, because to me, that sums up everything. Whether we're talking about the panoramic, whether we're talking about Biden, whether we're talking about the 2024 presidential election, whether we're talking about what's happening in Gaza, that is the question. That is the question. Can you connect the dots even when it reveals a pattern you don't want to be true? And this is really fundamentally saying that it is almost impossible for you to form judgments that contradict your existing belief system. It is almost impossible for you to come to a conclusion that contradicts what you want to be true or what you believe to be true. It's almost impossible. And this is for a good reason. If our belief systems were that flimsy, right? Every experience and new piece of information, we'd be changing religions every other day. We would be in some form of not all having all of our faculties working together, right? Because every time somebody says something to us, now we got to change our belief system or what we know or believe to be true to fit that, right? And some of us do have that issue, so don't get me wrong, right? But most of us have the opposing problem, that our belief systems are so rigid and what we want to be true has such deep implications for our sense of belonging, for our sanity, and for the cohesiveness of our identity, for our cultural identity, right? That what we want to be true is not just an intellectual thing. It has deep roots in holding together our perception of reality. And again, this is why we need Mercury retrograde in Pisces. This is why we need eclipses in Pisces and Virgo, because there are times where we need to change our belief systems, and we need to acknowledge when something is happening that contradicts what we want to be true. I know everybody wants for the vid to be just like the flu. They want it so bad because that means that they can disregard and reinterpret what they're experiencing in their body. They can tell a different story about sending their children to school and the repeated illnesses. In order to when we connect the dots that reveal the truth about what we've all done to ourselves by letting this thing rip, it's sanity breaking. It causes a moral injury that most of us cannot recover from. To have to accept that you have repeatedly exposed your child to an illness, mostly under circumstances that you really didn't have control of. What does that do to a person? Or to realize that your multiple infections with the vid have permanently altered your immune system, similarly to the way that HIV alters our immune systems. How can you really accept that? it's impossible. Look around. You can see it's impossible to accept that, because all the implications are depressing and heart-wrenching and oh, it just makes you feel so powerless and angry and sad, and just like you just don't want it to be true, but it is. Right? It is. Before I catch up on these comments here, I want to read just a couple more things. Mercury stations retrograde in Aries. This is the other part of the retrograde. So Mercury enters Aries on March 25th. This is actually the same day as the Virgo eclipse. And I think, let me see which one happens first. I think Mercury's in Pisces during this eclipse. Yeah, Mercury doesn't enter Aries until after the full moon. They're about 12, 14 hours apart. So Mercury is still in Pisces during the eclipse. But Mercury in Aries, harnessing the power of my voice. And again, the Virgo full moon eclipse on the 25th, revealing the pattern connecting what is seen, heard, and experienced. Next week on March 4th, no, that's not right. Next week on March 13th, we're going to have our monthly Sidereal Astrology Guide study group. We'll be going through all of the fill in the blanks. We'll be going over the monthly summary and the questions. The same link that I've been using for all of the other registrations is available. I think, is it in? Let me see. Yeah. Oh no, it's not in here. I'll have to fix it. I'll put the link in my profile for you to register for the study group. But if you are a friend, supporter, or advanced study student in the Podia community, you will automatically receive the link for that the day of the event. If you become a friend in the Div for Live Podia group, Podia community, your monthly subscription is the same cost, just about the same cost as the monthly study group. And I drop the link in there for you each month. So it's a win-win. For me, it's a win because my income is secure and steady, and a win for you because it's something you was going to do anyway, so just do that. Okay, lastly, April. Mercury stations retrograde in Aries, using my voice to impose my power of self-determination. That sounds like it's about to get crazy out here. We about to be doing some things. This Mercury retrograde station is just about exactly at the degree where Mars stationed retrograde on September 10th, 2020. Okay. We've got another eclipse, a new moon solar eclipse in Pisces on April 8th, debunking conspiracy. Ooh-wee. Then we've got Mercury going back into Pisces on April 9th, symbolically implying meaning. And then Mercury stationary direct in Pisces, figuratively expressing truth. This is all really interesting. And then finally, Mercury goes back into Aries to complete that transit May 10th, communicating to defend and protect. Okay, now let me catch up with these questions. Rosie Rising says, can this also be applied to our personal lives too, like not wanting to accept truths in personal relationships? Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. It's all the same. It's all the same, right? When I talk about reorganizing our collective hierarchies of trust and reorganizing our personal hierarchies of trust, this falls into reorganizing our personal hierarchies of trust. Right? Where what is a faculty that we're relying on to form judgments and draw conclusions in our personal internal life, but also in our relationships. Let's see here. Kitty Cat Van says April's going to be a crazy month. Yeah. April for me is, I honestly think it starts with Mercury going into Pisces and inching towards the North Node in Pisces. Let me see. When will Mercury conjoin the North Node in Pisces? I cannot believe it's 2024. That is so crazy to me. Okay, let's see. Mercury's at 21, 20 Pisces. Oh! Wait a minute. I think I knew this, but I think Mercury actually stations direct conjunct the North Node in Pisces. What date is this? Mercury stations direct on the 25th of April. Yeah, Mercury's at 20. Yeah, man, Mercury stations direct conjunct the North Node. Wow. That's so meaningful because we're just so deep in an information war, and so many of us are just oblivious. You know, we just don't recognize how much our ability to form judgments is happening inside like this manufactured vacuum of information, right? Like we think that we have all of the information, and we think that we're making decisions and forming judgments based on having all of this information. But like the fact is that so much is being withheld, and like unless you are in like this relatively small core group of people on Twitter, I maintain that even though Elno Mushki took over Twitter, it still has not destroyed the fact that Twitter is the place where you can get information first. I don't care what the topic is. I don't care what you're interested in. Twitter is the place where you get scientific information, political information, latest news events. Everyone else is playing catch up with Twitter, which is why still you see tweets being used in news stories and posted on Facebook and on Instagram and on TikTok, right? Because Twitter is you heard it here first. And I say that because in terms of what is going on with the panoramic, in terms of what's going on in Gaza, I mean, those are the two main things happening in the world right now for the Western world, at least. I can't speak for other people because I'm not there and I don't want to erase anybody else's experience. But in terms of the latest science, the latest studies, the latest clinical trials for drugs, the latest research and analysis on, long COVID and SARS-2 and, the latest on the variants that are taking root, the latest, on technology to, mitigate and protect yourself from the vid. I mean, Twitter is the place to get that. And so I say all of that to say that most people are not living in that world. They're not a part of the community. They don't keep up with the app that way. And so in terms of Mercury being the microphone, like Twitter is really the origin point of where people who are doing this research and keeping up with this news and writing these stories, etc., this is where they go to say it first. And the rest of us are playing telephone on other apps. We're playing telephone with our friends and family who are not here to hear it first, right? Let me catch up with what you're saying. Alligator Pie says, so many people's brains have lined up to be broken. Yeah, man, it's mind-boggling, and there's so much repression and unconscious repression that occurs because to really wrap my mind around what's happening, it's just like, it's immobilizing. Like, talk about, can you connect the dots even when it reveals a pattern you don't want to be true, right? Like I can't even really sit and think about If what I'm learning about the vid is true, if what I know that the vid does to the immune system is true, what does that mean for my family who is keeping getting infected over and over again? Right? These are the kinds of real things, right? What does it mean about my risk tolerance, right? For whether or not I engage with people, if this is true. Hold on one second, y'all. I don't know where my mask is. I'm just standing back because I don't have my mask. What's up? Is everything okay?
One of my dogs went missing.
Oh.
And Miss Lynette told me you have a camera.
It's not on though. It's not plugged in. Was that you looking for Milo earlier? Oh. Okay. Well, I'll keep a lookout.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll keep a lookout. I'll step out in a minute too, because you know they be coming up here and around my house sometimes. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll come ring on your doorbell if I see anything. Okay. He probably won't let me pick him up, but we'll see. You're welcome. Okay, I'm back. I heard my neighbor looking for her dog earlier, and I guess he got away. Okay, let's see here. Kitty Cat Van says, when Facebook was down, I ran to Twitter. Five Fight says, straight from a horse's mouth. Absolutely. Brianna. Brianna Myers says, it's so weird talking to my parents who don't have any social media. The information that they are getting is so biased and outdated. It's wild. That right there has such deep implications. And I just want to take a minute to point out two of the deep implications that has. I'll reread the comment. Brianna Myers says, it's so weird talking to my parents who don't have any social media. The information that they are getting is so biased and outdated. It's wild. Okay. The first implication that this has is that, one, two completely different pools of information that people are drawing from to make decisions and to form judgments. And these have everything to do with our health. This has everything to do with how we feel about what's happening, in the Middle East. It has a direct impact on how we judge ourselves and our bodies and our feelings and what we're experiencing, right? It has an impact on how we relate to each other. It has an impact on who we trust in our lives. It has an impact on who we connect with and who we're willing to extend grace to and who we make the object of our ire, right? This has really, really deep implications on who we believe, right? And the other one is really deeply connected to that this has implications for what we call reality, right? What we see as real, what we believe or know to be real. That this is why it's an information war, because information is not just fighting over facts and meanings of words. Information war means I am shaping the reality that you inhabit. With information, someone has the power to fashion reality for you. I mean, what do you think a cult is, right? Cults are so into controlling the flow of information because controlling the flow of information shapes your experience of reality. Controlling the flow of information manufactures these hierarchies of trust that says that I'm withholding information in a way that forces you to rely on me as the final arbiter of what is real and true, right? I mean, this has such deep, 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 deep implications. And it's not just a small thing. And I know that we talk about it that way sometimes, but it really, 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 really isn't. Those of us who have remained cautious and concerned and vigilant, I mean, you will hear us often say we're living in a completely different reality. But the different reality that we're living in is an information reality, meaning that one, we have access to information, and our interpretation and understanding and integration of that information is constantly being reinforced because we have found community with other people who are interpreting it the same way, right? But it's also living in a different reality because people who don't have this information literally do not see what we see. When I go to the store, I'm looking for masks. Matter of fact, I went to the grocery store today, and as I was counting masks, I saw one on my way out. It is somebody from on here, right? Right? I never met them before, but I was still able to recognize them with the mask. So don't let these people fool you, right? Anyways, that's all I have to say about that. Estebanito says, heavy is the burden for those of us who carry the truth of the vid. Absolutely. Sabrina Sparkle says, my grandma only uses Facebook and watches mainstream news, so it's mostly propaganda. Sabrina Sparkle also says, so I have to share information with her. Yeah, man. And I find that with our elders, that they're the ones who really don't want to integrate new information. They're very, very, very resistant to allowing new information to change their opinions and their beliefs and their behavior. I mean, and it's not just elders, but you know, those of you who are taking care of your parents in some way, shape, or form get that. Five Fight says mainstream news is also so sensationalized, framing structural failures as feel-good stories. Absolutely. And this is one of those things. It's reinforcing an existing belief system. And this time that we're in now is about changing our belief systems. I want to go back to, I think I passed this up and acknowledge Alligator Pie's comment that I can't summarize in a comment how helpful all of this is for planning the next couple of months. I'm so happy about that because that's what this is for. Okay, let's see. Brianna Meyer says, and when they are faced with this alternative information, if it's not verified by mainstream media or the powers that be, then it's not, quote, real. Okay, this is really it. When I talk about reorganizing our collective and personal hierarchies of trust, right? We've got mainstream news media at the top. There's this video that's gone around where all of these news stations all over the country in like every city owned by Sinclair, they're all reading the same script. They lined up all of these news anchors. Literally all of them are saying the same thing, right? That is a manufactured reality. That is, I'm going to tell you what this means. I'm going to decide what I think you should know and what I think you should not know. I mean, let's just sit with that for a minute. Who gets to decide what you should know and what you should not know? Who's in control of that? I think that's really also the Aries portion of this retrograde, right? Aries is the it's about control and it's about power, right? Matter of fact, let's go back to the 2024 Sidereal Astrology Guide and the Div for Live Essentials. Right, so for Aries here, we have the self-governor, right? To know and show what you are capable of, right? Everybody has a need for that. Some of us have it as a need more than others, right? But when we have important transits through Aries, like a Mars retrograde in Aries in 2020, like eclipses in Aries and Pisces 2022 and 2023, like Jupiter in Aries 2023 and 2024, like a Mercury retrograde partially in Aries in Mercury retrograde in Aries 2023 and partially in Aries 2024, right? These are time periods where what Aries really says is that it's, when I talk about signs, they exist in a vacuum, meaning I'm not taking into consideration the nuance of how it interacts with other signs and other planets and other signs, right? So Aries in a vacuum says, I am all powerful. I'm in control of me. And if I want something to happen, I have to do it. Aries says if this has not yet happened, it is because I have not yet done it. Right? This is in a vacuum. So for Mercury in Aries, right, the need to be heard and understood is subordinated to this need to know and show what we're capable of. The key word for Aries is dominate, or dominion, or dominance, right? To dominate or have dominion is to govern, is to have authority over, is to take control over, right? So Aries is that raw will, that raw grit that gives us the sense of entitlement and the motivation and drive to act, right? You know, to do what I'm capable of, to harness control, to assert myself, to take up space, right? To center my capabilities rather than the rules, to center my abilities and personal power and autonomy rather than cooperation or collaboration. No, I'm going to do it. No, I've got it. I'm not waiting for you, right? I'm not going to try to get you to do anything. I'm going to do it. Get out of my way. That's Aries. Afura X says, I think it's wild how white supremacy will undermine people's ability to trust their own motherfucking judgment, right? I mean, that's what cults do. The whole point of a cult is, no, I tell you what's real. I tell you what's true. I withhold any information that contradicts what I'm telling you. And I punish any behavior that reinforces what I believe to be untrue, right? I mean, it's all serving power. And I think that that's one of the most, again, that's one of the most, excuse me, interesting things about the Aries part of this Mercury retrograde is that there is a power struggle in this war of information. There's a power struggle in this information war. And this power struggle is over who gets the microphone, whose voice gets amplified, right? Who gets the microphone? Who gets to get turned up the loudest in the mix, right? Who gets turned down in the mix? Who gets silenced? Who can yell the loudest? Who can push the hardest with their voice, right? How does our need to be heard serve our need for autonomy and a sense of control and power, right? And whose power does it serve, right? Anyways, that's all I have to say. I've said a lot. I've probably been on here for almost 2 hours. Not quite. But that's all I have to say. If you have any questions or concerns, speak now or forever hold your peace. Because I'm going to get off of here before the sun goes down. I'm going to get off of here before the sun goes down. Do you have any questions? Do you have any questions about this Mercury retrograde? Do you have any questions about these eclipses or about eclipses in general? You guys are so welcome. Rosie Rising, 5 Fights, Pumpkin Spicy. You're very, very welcome. Afora X. Lindy says, what does this mean for Cap risings in our relationship with others' information? For that, I am going to direct you to the 2024 Sidereal Astrology Guide that explicitly shows you how to interpret everything that I've talked about today for your rising sign, right? Thanks, Darren. You're welcome, Two-Headed Serpent, right? So when you come to this guide and you go to the My Sidereal Birth Chart pages, you'll circle Capricorn here. And Capricorn, right? Pisces is your 3rd house and Aries is your 4th house. And so you go to the house meanings table. These are the meanings for the third house, and these are the meanings for the fourth house. And you're actually going to take those meanings and you're going to put them in the fill in the blanks, right? So you're going to put those third house meanings here under Mercury and Pisces, hearing what is not said. So third house is your family, your social media community, your rebellings, your siblings, right? Your cousins, your aunt and uncle, right? And then you'll put the fourth house meanings here, harnessing the power of my voice, right? And you're going to put that here in the fourth house. And so you're going to put father, you're going to put home, right? You're going to put some power, some body parts here too, right? Body parts for the third house are hands, arms, and shoulders. You're going to put some body parts here for the fourth house. If you are Capricorn rising, right? So you're going to put your stomach and your chest and breast here, right? So there's that. Q Luna 9 says, thank you so much. You're brilliant, beautiful, and golden. So glad I met you. You are so welcome. I'm so glad that this has been helpful for all of you. Hopefully Instagram won't be, don't want to be a hater no more. And it will allow me to keep this live up here. Yeah. You all share this with the homies. All right. Peace out. How do I stop this? I stop it like this.